Oh yeah, chicken parmesan, one of my favorite dishes in the world. So I recently saw Alton Brown's return episode of Good Eats. I figured I'd give it a shot to make chicken parm the way he makes it. Now granted, I've made this dish dozens of different ways, thousands of times over the course of my life. Let's run through what we got here. You always need your chicken. You always need your cheese. Got some nice San Marzano tomatoes, garlic, olive oil, herbs, breadcrumbs, salt and vinegar potato chips. Nobody believes me. I'm not going to knock it until I try it, so let's give this a fair shake. So let's get started with the sauce. He wants to use all crushed tomatoes and to drain out the extra liquid. I'm actually going to make a little substitution there. That's probably the biggest diversion I'm taking from his recipe. And I'm going to use a mixture of whole San Marzano tomatoes and then crushed tomatoes. When I watched the episode, his sauce came out rather thick. It's a lot thicker than I would want on a chicken parm. So I'm going to try to make a little bit of a thinner sauce. It's not as gluey as his. I hope it doesn't affect the end product, but I think some of the things he's doing along the way help to mitigate some of the ways in which chicken parm usually gets soggy. So let's get started on the sauce. So the recipe calls for 8 garlic cloves, which I have in my mortar and pestle. And this is one of those things, you're doing an Alton Brown recipe. He's going to have extra steps, and doing the garlic in a mortar and pestle is one of them. I usually don't, but in this case here, I'm going to try to follow the recipe to the letter, and let's do it. So his rationale for doing it this way is that by doing it in a mortar and pestle and making it into like a paste, with the salt, it's drawing out enough moisture and the garlic won't burn in the olive oil. Let's see if that works. I mean, I just think sauteing garlic and then deglazing the pan with the tomatoes is probably just good enough. But it's his recipe. I'm not going to mess with it too much. Alright, we're pasty enough. A couple of little big chunks in there. I kind of like chunks of garlic in my sauce, but let's call it a day with that and then move on to the next step. So the steps are to grind up the garlic, which is what I got, heat olive oil and fry the garlic in a pan until it begins to brown, 2 minutes. Add anchovies, which I got here. Not something I would normally add to a tomato sauce, but this is one of those things where Food Network gets cute. He says for umami. I don't know what Italian's looking for umami in their dish specifically, but we'll play the game. Then that cooks for a couple minutes, then we add our tomatoes, throw in a little parm rind. I have whole tomatoes, which I'm going to drain per his recipe. I'm just going to discard the tomato juice that's in there. I'm not really going to use it for anything. And then I have crushed tomatoes. So let's get these going, and then we'll get this sauce cooking, and then we'll go from there. So I have my sauce bubbling away. That's got to cook for about an hour, it says. Mine's going to have a little more moisture than the one that his does on the show. I just like my chicken parm that way. I'm not going to make a really chunky sauce for this. But while that's going, we can work on some other elements. The breading. All right, the breading. That's where this gets a little, I'm going to say, weird. Now, I'm all for using junk food for the purpose of making a dish. I'll make chicken fingers and I'll coat it in things like goldfish, Cheez-Its. Sometimes I do grape nuts to make really crispy oven baked chicken fingers. Where I just think salt and vinegar chips just seems very random. And he has a justification in his recipe where he says there's just enough acid in there to lower the pH. I don't know exactly what you need to lower the pH for when you're frying chicken. I'm gonna play the game. So his recipe calls for 120 grams of breadcrumbs. I'm gonna make it a little more. So I'm measuring everything out here. Actually, it looks like 120 grams is probably gonna be a lot of breadcrumbs. So 120 grams breadcrumbs, and then 20 grams of salt and vinegar potato chips. Two teaspoons of oregano, 2 teaspoons of parsley, dried parsley. We have fresh parsley for later. 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder. Salute. Now the cheese. Most people do a mixture of either like Parmesan cheese and mozzarella. Fresh mozzarella is a hard one to use because there's a lot of moisture in fresh mozzarella, and I think Alton Brown is right in this case that it becomes really rubbery once you actually melt it in the oven. So I like to use a low moisture mozzarella, which is the same thing he recommends. He also throws in Italian fontina. That's going to give a little more flavor. It's going to be a little bit more of a meltier cheese. So we'll play the game. Not something I would do. This chunk cost me an extra $4. I would normally use Polly-O for this. So let's get to grating. So we're here assembling the chicken parm. What I just did was pre-broiled the sauce the way he indicates to do. I fried the chicken. It does look like these get a little bit, I'm gonna say black. They're pretty dark. I try to do 2 minutes aside. I had to actually do it a little bit less, so I hope they're cooked all the way through. I think they will be though. So now we're just gonna assemble, and then we'll throw it under the broiler and melt the cheese. I got my mixture of cheeses here, so let's do it. I wanted to show it to you coming out of the oven. Looks pretty nice. I probably could have kept it in there another minute, but I was afraid I was gonna burn it. But now we'll plate up, we'll eat, and that'll be dinner. I'll let you know how it tastes. All right, so here it is, Alton Brown's Chicken Parm. Decided to eat dinner outside, first time ever, 5 years living in this house. Got our natural wine, Susukaro came out, and we're about to taste this. All right, here's the bite. So it's cooked through. I was worried about that for a second. I tried to get a bite with everything in it in the corner, so to taste if it's crispy or not. So let's see. The breading definitely is thick. You don't taste the salt and vinegar from the chips. I wasn't worried that you would because there's not a lot in there. It was like 10% of it. All in all, this is a solid chicken parm. The sauce honestly is a little bit thick for me, especially that you add the anchovies in there. It almost seems like it thickens it up a little too much, but a solid offering from Mr. Alton Brown. Cheers. So we're finishing up dinner right now, finishing up wine. It was a really nice dinner. This was good. I would probably not put the salt and vinegar chips again. I didn't think it really added anything. You get the same kind of effect with any kind of breading that you do. Basically anything that was in contact with sauce. And admittedly, I made my sauce a little bit looser than he made his, but it still was pretty thick for a sauce that I would put on a chicken parm. But the one thing that I would recommend doing is mixing fontina cheese in with the mozzarella. That was delicious. It made it nice and oily and kind of bubbly on top. Mozzarella will do that, and I usually add provolone. I like a little bit of like soft provolone on top of that. But the fontina was like a little more delicate. It melted a little nicer, so like it was more even throughout. So I think that's probably the significant change that he makes to the general recipe that I think is probably the best thing. But the salt and vinegar chips is more of a stunt. I really don't think it does much to it. That's my opinion on it. Like I said, I was going to reserve judgment until I tried it, and I tried it, and it's fine. Now we have a bag of salt and vinegar chips sitting up there that we're probably going to have to figure out what to do with. So somebody's excited about that, obviously. So it's getting dark. Going to head back inside, clean up after this meal, and oh yeah, we made Alton Brown's brownie recipe a few weeks ago and froze some. We have some left over, so we're going to have some of that with ice cream tonight. And that's basically it. So until next time, see you later.